In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up your project so that you can make sure that your project or your app, whatever you're trying to build, is going to serve you for the long run and is going to be set up so that you can actually build on top of it and not have a bunch of headaches going forward. By the end of this video, show you how to actually start a project, get it all the authentication set up, and then move on to part 2 that will actually show you how to then further the project and take what you have and send that into a loop so that the AI doesn't hallucinate along the way. So if that sounds cool and something that you want to stick around for, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and let's get right into it. As you can see behind me, without further ado, just to get right into this, we are going to need to install a few things. Obviously, we're going to need to install Claude Code. So if you haven't already, go ahead and install that. So if you're on a Mac machine or on a Windows machine or using Windows or Windows subsystem for Linux like I am, go ahead and use this command right here to install that. You can also use Homebrew as well. If you are so inclined to use Homebrew for Linux, you can use that too. But if you're coming here as a beginner, completely fine. You can just use this curl command. What that's going to do is install Claude onto your machine. If you also want to, you can also install Codex. That is going to install ChatGPT or OpenAI's version of Claude Code onto your machine. It is similar in some ways in terms of how it works to Cursor. If you've used that and just used their recent version of Cursor, it basically is that, their OpenAI's version of that. Now, that said, both of these tools, and I am using that word here specifically, they are tools. Both of these tools will allow you to do some agentic coding, but they will come at a cost. So with Claude Code, you're going to need to have a pro or max membership, which is $100 a month. And with Codex, it will be at least the $20 version or the $20 plus plan, I believe, which is what I'm using right now. That's in terms of ChatGPT or in terms of Codex, that should be enough. With Claude, it's a little bit different because of the way that Claude decided or Anthropic decided to layer their plans. But all that said, you are going to need these two, or at least these two. Definitely Claude, because that's the one that I'm heavily going to be using here. But either one of them will do the job because it's going to utilize the same thing that we're going to be using inside the video to actually get stuff started. Now, once you go ahead and install Claude Code onto your machine, it's going to look like, or then allow you to bring up something that looks like this. This is the terminal version of Claude Code. Now, this might look a little scary, and if it does, there is a version that you can use inside of VS Code or inside of Cursor. Both of them come up the exact same way. I'm going to show you exactly how to open that right now. So you can see behind me that I've opened VS Code, and I do already have Claude Code installed on VS Code. But if you don't already have that, you want to go to extensions and then go to Claude or search for Claude. And the first thing that you're going to see is this guy right here, Claude Code for VS Code. If you're on Cursor, it will be similar. I'm going to see if I can do that in real time. Cursor. So we have the marketplace here. Probably why. Okay, let me do that. Now, if you're using Cursor, the installation should be similar because that is a VS Code fork and their marketplace. Well, I say that now, but if you're using an older version of Cursor, I should say, that would be what you would actually see. They have gone away from the VS Code fork, so it may be a little bit different. I was not able to bring up their marketplace. So we try to open the marketplace and it just spins. I don't know what's going on with their marketplace at the moment, but they went away from the VS Code fork. I don't know what they were doing with that because they was actually having some success, but they've gone away from the VS Code fork and the marketplace does not come up for me at the moment. So we're just going to go away from that. But VS Code does get the job done. It will then bring up something that looks like this guy on the left side here. You could also have it on the right, but if you go ahead and click that little guy right there, you could do this from local, which we are going to, or web, but I would suggest doing this all from local, starting a new session. And to start a new session, you're going to go right up here, this button up here, and it's going to bring you to this guy. I'm going to make that a little bit easier to see. And we're going to start. Well, let's back up for a second. So when we're talking about building a project, what we want to be able to do is brainstorm first before we do anything else and get the structure of the project, all the ideas that we need to have, anything that could currently be a roadblock maybe, and have all of that laid out for Claude before we actually do any coding. Once we do that, then we can actually do some coding. Cut. So I created a skill, or the way to do that with Claude Code, the best way that I've found to do that with Claude Code is to create a skill. You can access your skills by just hitting the slash and then typing skills, or should, I thought maybe that's how it does it inside the actual thing. Let's see, where are the skills here? So for some reason, I couldn't figure out through the slash commands inside of VS Code how to actually get that to show up in terms of showing all the skills that I currently have available to me. But I did just go ahead and said, hey, what skills can you see? And these are the ones that currently are available. But this is the one that I want to bring out or call attention to specifically, because this is the one that I'm going to use and to start with to actually get started with any project really, but specifically this one. And this project that we're going to build, or that I'm going to showcase building, is a project that is near and dear to my heart because I am an avid cosplay fan, if you will, fanboy maybe of sorts. But what really plagues me is two things really when it comes to cosplay. One, what to actually cosplay, and two, how to pose it. Because I can never pose I can, but in the moment, it's just so super hard. And especially if you're trying to plan a photo shoot and all that kind of stuff, it's really hard. So if there are any cosplayers out there, leave it down in the comments. But that's what we're going to build. And what I'm going to attempt to build is an application that will allow you to, in maybe augmented reality or something like that, that will allow you to see the pieces before you actually go and print them inside of a 3D printer. Let's talk through an app idea that I had. Send that off and see what it comes back with. Okay. So using the skill app, Claude may use instructions, code, or files from the skill, brainstorm, and pressure test. So this is the description of what the actual skill does. Brainstorm and pressure test the application ideas based on what the user describes they want to build. Use whatever the user says they want to help think through, ideating on, fleshing out, or coming up with ideas, features, angles for an app, product, or tool, or side project. Especially in early stages, I want to build X. What should it do? How should it approach it? All that kind of stuff. So in this, I'm going to say, go ahead and just let that run. And it's going to ask me a series of questions. So first off, go ahead. What's the app idea? Okay, so the app idea is basically an app idea that will allow cosplayers to see their cosplay ideas that they want to bring to life, whatever the character is, in 3D so that they can spin the cosplay piece, they can observe it, they can bring it closer to them, they can understand how to put it together, all of those things. And then once they have the cosplay outfit completely constructed, then they should be able to take that outfit and place it onto a live avatar full body that they can then become or see the finished product and then pose it as well. So I didn't show this beforehand, but what I'm using is a skill that I created that allows me to go back and forth with Claude to build whatever it is. But most of the time when I'm trying to get something out, I don't necessarily know what I need, what is going to be needed in the long run, what's going to be needed to get started. All that kind of stuff is what I'm trying to flesh out here. So the next question, it's asking me to if we're going in 3 different directions. So we could go with build planner first. The app is fundamentally a construction guide. Each cosplay is a 3D explodable assembly. That actually sounds really cool. Layers, scenes, materials, hardware with annotations like EVA, foam, 6mm, heat formed. The avatar posing is a reward at the end, which is actually, that sounds pretty cool. A wedge inside of this solves the painful, how do I actually make this gap that Pinterest boards don't have. The trade-off here would require real cosplay construction expertise baked into every model. That might be hard to scale to any character. So that's something to think about. We could do an AI generated cosplay visualizer. User types or uploads a character, your forger, but make it steampunk. So that could, I mean, that maybe. And the app generates a 3D outfit on an avatar. They can spin, pose, and remix. Construction breakdown is auto-generated and approximate. The wedge for this particular app would be an unlimited library, instant gratification, great for ideation or social sharing. The trade-off here would be construction guidance is generic and sometimes can be wrong. It's a dream tool, but not a build tool. So there's the trade-offs there. And then we have an avatar as you try on. The core hook is your avatar body scan measurements, wearing community uploaded cosplays before you commit to making it or buying one. Marketplace plus previs hybrid is something that we could have here. A wedge for this particular app would be an answer to, will this look good on me? Will it actually fit? Possibly, all that kind of stuff. The question that every cosplayer asks themselves. Yes, we all do, because that is exactly what I ask myself when I make a new or when I have a new cosplay that has just come in, which by the way, I have one that I need to actually try on. The trade-off here would be that we live and die on the avatar fidelity and the size of the cosplay library. Cold start problem is a real thing here. So another pointed question that the AI is now asking me is the person opening this app on a Saturday morning trying to plan a build they've already committed to, daydream and discover what to cosplay next, or decide whether a specific costume will look right on their body. Because those are 3 different apps, and the first feature you ship has to be unmistakably one of them. So in my opinion, I kind of want to go with the build planner first, with a hybrid of the avatar as you try on. Honestly, I want to go with a hybrid of all 3 because there's a layer of all 3 of them that we could potentially solve a problem for. This may be a tiered type of solution, but I do want to at some point tackle all 3 of those. This basically is kind of like a hybrid thing that I want to build. I want to kind of have a hybrid of all 3 of those. A build planner first, but a build planner first application that is AI generated basically for the entire cosplay. So we start with an AI generated thing, and then the avatar is the end all when the user actually settles on something and then they want to progress with it. Okay, so the next thing that it is now asking, that's a coherent flow, generate, plan, embody, and it actually maps to the cosplayer's real journey, which is true. Pick the character, figure out how to build it, and then become it. The risk with hybrids isn't the vision, it's one of the 3 pillars almost always carries the whole experience. And so you can see that this is now giving me some more pushback on the idea to hopefully further flesh it out. So the honest pushback here is that there is tension inside of the potential stack that we could have. So The AI generation is the easiest to make impressive and has a wow moment. In 10 seconds, you have something, but the hardest to make accurate enough to build from. Inside of the build planning is the most valuable, possibly because that's where the idea actually generates from, but the hardest to generate automatically because, again, it's an idea that you have to actually come up with. But at the same time, you could also use AI to generate the idea too. So there's that. And then there's the avatar try-on. This, in my opinion, feels like it might be the hardest thing to actualize because of the potential weight on the camera portion of everything. But we'll see how we can actually get this done. We'll see what we can come up with. So the hybrid works, but V1 of this type of thing would tell or would be something that we would want a friend to tell a friend about. The others can exist at a lighter surface if we want to. So the pointed question that the AI is now asking here, when a cosplayer finishes their first session with your app and texts a friend, you have to try this. What sentence do you want them to send? It generated a sick custom cosplay from my OC, from my original concept. It told me exactly how to build the helmet I've been stuck on. Or it put the costume on a 3D me and I posed it. I picked the sentence because that's the one, again, that we want to launch with credibly and all that kind of stuff. So again, this gives more area for thinking through this. Again, I want to make the wow factor. Hey, this generated a cosplay of my original concept, but it also put it on a 3D me and then posed it so that I can then see what I would want to have as an idea going into a con. So I'm not blindly trying to pose inside of this new costume. Now, if you're wondering how I'm getting all this stuff out, the tool that I'm using is called Whisperflow. I'll leave a link to it down inside of the description. It is okay. It is not necessarily the best of things. Would I make my own? Yes. And is that going to be a potential video in the future? Yes, because I just don't want to pay for it, one. And two, I feel like I can make something that's better. But back to this. Good. That's a real pivot worth naming out loud. You're no longer building a cosplay construction tool that ends with an avatar. You're building pre-con, pre-visualization, or previs for cosplayers, which is that is true, kind of. In a way, a way to see yourself in a cosplay before you commit time, money, and or build to it. The build planner shifts from headline feature to upsell. Love it or hate it. How is it making you feel? How do you make it? All that kind of stuff. That's a sharper, more defensible product, and it's TikTok, Instagram shaped, which matters for growth, which is true. The three things that it called out to me were photoreal you versus stylized you, which would basically be you as a realistic situation in VR. Like, that's me. It's my face or body of some sort. Or we could do a one-shot generation versus iteration. This could, at least according to the AI, this could have a wow, or this has a single wow tap and reveal moment for the user, but iteration could be a little rigorous from what I'm thinking about. But iteration for this becomes stickier because the more that we add to that feature, it becomes a more defensible moat of sorts. So that's something to think about. And then posing depth, static hero pose. Yes, the static hero pose. We got to do it. A few presets and all that kind of stuff. So the pointed question for the next one would be, when the user opens the app for the very first time, what's the first thing they do? Upload selfies, scan their body and build the 3D me, or upload the character concept, because whichever one is step one tells you what app fundamentally is. Is it an avatar platform that does cosplay, or a cosplay generator that happens to use your body? Those diverge fast. So we kind of need to think about that. So it would be really cool to have the app open on a tripod then having the app scan my body as I have it open, but then have the ability to describe with my words what I want to actually build for the next cosplay. Okay, so now it says now we have a real product in shape. The scan is the moat, which is something that we are trying to build here. So once a cosplayer has their 3D me in the app, every future cosplay idea is one voice prompt away from a personalized preview. That's what we want. And the scan only lives in your app. That's retention by gravity, not by feature. A few honest that surface here, the scan is a commitment gate asking someone to put their phone on a tripod and rotate for 30 seconds before they see any output is a steep first ask. That's actually a really good callback, a really good call out to think about, because it actually is. Like, if I'm thinking about it, to me, it would feel like it would work. But for the end user, if I'm looking at it from the end user's perspective, that's going to be hard unless they're already sold on it. Like, unless they're already told, hey, use this app. If they're cold coming to the app, they're probably not going to want to. So maybe that's something to think about. This is something that it's saying that we should. So apps that did this well, like Nike Fit, Apple's Body Try-On, had a known brand promise behind it already. Exactly what I was saying. So if they already know and trust the app, they'll be willing to go ahead and do it. So if I showcase the app working at a con and then placed it in front of people that way, then that might be the thing that they would bring them closer to the app, but cold off the street, maybe not. So the next thing is voice only versus voice plus references. Cosplayers don't just describe, they screenshot. True. And as a cosplayer myself, like, all the things that it's bringing out, because I actually cosplay and I do the things that it's actually doing, saying that we do, it's true, and that makes that's true. So, because if you look at my phone reel right now, there's a bunch of just ninjetti, because I was planning something for a Lord Draken cosplay, and it never really panned out all the way because I didn't get a chance to finish it before the con. But that is something to think about, something that I would want to think through. Their phones are full of reference images, official art, fan art, Pinterest boards. I want this jacket from this character, but with these horns, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Pure voice favors original concept, but voice plus image drop favors recreations. Okay. So yes, that's true. Identity of the 3D me is there one canonical scan, or can users tweak it? Show me 15 pounds lighter. Give me the shoulders I'm building toward. Okay, this sounds small, but it secretly defines the app. Is this a mirror or a fantasy? Cosplay culture loves both, which is true, but the marketing tone is wildly different. So the pointed question then is, for the launch, is or the cosplayer who wants to preview an existing canon character, Goku, your Cloud, or anybody like that, on their body? Because picking canon means you're immediately in IP licensing, moderation territory, and anime studios and all that kind of stuff. This is true, but we're not going that far yet. So we aren't going to be licensing this or anything like that just yet. So for now, the voice plus a reference, so having voice and reference for the characters that they want to build, is what we want, but licensing can happen later on. And we got another pushback. So smart commit and the voice reference combo is the right call for canon. True. Cosplayers already work this way. They hand their seamstress a Pinterest board and say, this jacket, that helmet, my colors, all that kind of stuff. This is true because I've literally done that before. You're just digitizing that brief, which is that makes it okay. So that makes the idea of the app a little bit easier to find or fine tune, because what initially or at the end of the day, if you're not necessarily a seamstress yourself or seamster that you can sew and all that kind of stuff yourself, or you don't have a 3D printer like I do not and I don't sew, I would have to build everything and then send it to somebody. So if that sending becomes easier and you can actually send it with patterns and measurements, all that kind of stuff, that's a good idea. So cosplay culture and AI generated canon are different gray zones. Here we go. Selling a foam and paint Goku costume on Etsy has been tolerated for 20 years because it's craft, labor, and one-off. Generating an image of Goku on a recognizable person's body via AI is closer to what got apps like Lense and various anime AI tools yanked from the App Store and hit with Toei Bandai cease and desist. The medium changes the legal temperature even when the subject doesn't. Whew. So it's calling out stuff that I didn't even think about, wasn't even remotely trying to think about. I was just trying to build a cool app. But it's talking or generating things or thinking through things that I didn't even think about beforehand. So if I was going to do all this stuff, this is stuff that I would be looking at or facing pretty quickly early on. So there's a subtle reframe that probably keeps the wow and softens the risk. The app doesn't generate Goku on you. It generates the cosplay of Goku on you. Visibly handmade looking, foam armor with seams, dye wig, painted boots, fabric textures, the slightly imperfect look of real cosplay that it has. That's both more authentic to cosplay culture, and it sits closer to where Etsy and cons already live legally. Cool. So the pointed question then becomes, is the generated output meant to look like the character? Clean, screen accurate AI fan art of Goku on you, or like a cosplay of the character, handmade textures, foam, fabric seams, wig fibers, all that kind of stuff. All right, so that's a sharp instinct. More pointed question, is the preview the user sees a fixed ideal final form, always flawless, always aspirational, doesn't know who you are as a maker, or is it calibrated to the user? Okay, yeah. So this would be calibrated to the user, that it learns how you build over time. So it has again given me another pointed question. I'm going to skip through this one a little bit faster than the thing that we want to think about is you need inputs to calibrate. The first render is the highest stakes moment in the app, which is true. And then calibrated apps attract serious users, not viral users. So really what we want is a serious community anyway. So we don't necessarily need the whole viral vibe. But the real question then becomes, what does a session 0 look like? Does a brand new user with no history answer questions about their skill, upload reference photos of past builds, or get shown a skill ladder render of multiple versions of themselves in the same cosplay and pick where they actually are? Okay. So for this, they would come, or a ground zero user would come with reference photos of things that they want to build, past builds, and then also they should be shown or at least be asked of a skill ladder so that they can tweak the app towards the way that they want to build. And then also they should be able to describe how they build, whether they build with just foam or with foam and with 3D printing and all that kind of stuff. So the next point question is going to ask is, now that the app knows the maker, your body, your skills, your methods, all that kind of stuff, your past work, what brings the user back between cosplay projects? Cosplayers do 2 to 4 builds per year. Maybe the app has incredible data and a magical first session, but there's a long gap possibly between I just finished Cloud and what's next. Is the in-between hook discovery? The app suggests cosplays it thinks you'd crush. Is it community? Your renders feed into a maker network? Is it progression, skill tree challenges to level up methods you don't have yet? Or is it planning, queuing up your next 3 builds with material lists and some timelines? Okay. So with this build, the bring back feature or the stickiness is basically the planning and also the progression. So a slight community and gamified feel to the app a little bit to bring more users or bring retention to the app over. And again, we have more of a pointed question. So it's asking, do we want it to be planning led, community led, or progression led? For me, I would say I want this to be more progression and planning led with the community feel. All right, so we now have gotten to the final piece here and locks this product in terms of the build that we want to start with. So here's what you've actually built through this conversation in one breath. A craft companion for serious cosplayers, building canon characters. Scan your body, upload your references and past builds, describe how you make things, and the app generates a polished but homemade 3D preview of you in any character, calibrated to your actual skills and methods. Your home screen is your build board and your progression timeline, and the community is the layer that makes other makers' progress visible without asking you to migrate off to Instagram. That's at least it feels real, defensible, monetizable, possibly. Nothing on the market combines body scanning, maker profile, collab, all that kind of stuff. So what we would need, or what we have, is a progression-led app that has a feel or feels empty on day one, which is our biggest problem at the moment. A new user has nothing to look back on. The progression magic only kicks in 6 months later down the road once they have a real portfolio, which is true. And then the final pointed question, and this is the one that closes the brainstorm, so we have to ask or answer this one. Are you building this for yourself first, the cosplayer scratching your own itch, validate with you and your immediate cosplay friends, no urgency on scale? Or is this a product you're trying to make or take to market with paying users in 1 year? Because everything you've designed works either way, but the answer determines whether it is a weekend prototype that you live inside until it's right, or a V0 you ship to 50 cosplayers in a Discord and start measuring. Those are different first months. So this app is, for me personally, first. But it also will potentially be an app that I will send to the greater cosplay community, the world large, at some point once I have built everything out for myself that I enjoy and that I've vetted with my friends as well. But first off, it's going to be something for me, my friends, and then the worldwide afterwards. That's actually the healthiest answer you could have given. And it changes the posture of the whole project for the better. Build for me first, which is what I wanted to do in the first place, which is how Strava, Notion, Linear, all those things, and a long list of beloved tools that I actually use got started. Founders making the thing for themselves first, and then building for the audience with no audience pressure. The IP question becomes near zero risk. Like I said earlier, the onboarding polish doesn't matter yet. Community is a phase 3 problem, not a V0 feature type of thing. And collaboration is easy at first. The AI collaborates to you, one user with deep ground truth. That's a trackable machine learning problem. Calibrating to 10,000 makers across method profiles is a much harder problem that you don't need to solve yet, which is true. I don't want to solve it yet. So the one thing to watch out for, it says yourself, friends, in the world arc, is a failure mode waiting to happen, is building something only you enjoy and can't generalize. Every cosplayer has their own preferences. Your foam workflow is not your friend's 3D print workflow and is not a stranger's sewing workflow, which is again true. The friends phase is the critical validation gate that catches this. Don't skip or rush past it if I'm going to actually put this out in the world, that is. If 3 friends use the app for 1 cosplay each and the wow lands for all 3, then I have something if I really want to put this out. If not, then it is what it is. But from here, now we should be able to turn this entire conversation into what will be known as a PRD, or a product requirement document. What I also might need to do is, once I have the product requirement document, create a a technical requirement document as well. So we talk about the product at a high level and then the technical stuff at a granular level so we actually know what we need to actually do the build itself. So let's go ahead and start that process now and get this entire conversation into a PRD. So now that we have all of this fleshed out and this idea inside of a well thought out or well laid out conversation, let's take this entire conversation and create a PRD from this conversation so that we can start the process of producing this app. All right. So now that we have gone through the process of talking through everything with the AI, understanding the skill or understanding the app as a whole from a bird's eye view, very high level. Now, what we're going to do is take all that and use a skill called 2PRD. Again, using a skill that is coming from Matt Polock. Shout out to him, by the way. And this is called 2PRD, which is basically going to take everything that we just talked about inside of this conversation and throw it into a PRD skill, or throw it into a PRD document, I should say. So we're go ahead and say yes to this. This will then start going through all of the conversation, looking at everything, and then building a PRD that we can then use to create this project. So while that is happening, I'm going to go ahead and let that happen, let it cook, and then I'll be back once it's done. Oh, and by the way, while it's doing that, you can see that this is a completely bare project. Nothing is in here. So I'm letting this from the ground up start this project. So literally nothing is here. Everything is being created from scratch. So you can see that happening in real time. But again, this might take a while, so I'll be back. Okay, so you can see that the AI has now come back with a bit of a pushback. So it says, quick situational note before I write. This project directory is Greenfield. There's no code in it, no Git repo, no issue tracker, nothing at all set up at the moment. I did get this from Matt Polock in his skills repo. I'll write the PRD locally as a PRD MD in the project root, so you have it as a Drober artifact. You can polish it if I need to, or you can publish it, to an actual tracker later once one is set up. Before I write, the skill requires 2 quick check-ins on modules and testing. Here's my sketch of major deep modules I see from the conversation. Each one is meant to encapsulate hairy internals behind a simple testable interface, which is exactly what we want. Because when we're writing code, this is just software engineering 101 in general. When we're writing code, we want to make the code as defensible as possible, and if we can, as small and manageable as possible so that we can test it. And we don't want, just because we can throw 1,000 lines of code inside of a project, that doesn't necessarily mean that we should. So here, this is exactly what we wanted to stop, pause, ask these questions. So do the 9 phase 1 modules above match what I want to build? Anything missing, misnamed, or is there anything that needs to be split or merged? So body scan video frames, avatar, okay, mesh cleanup, maker profile, stores, skill ladder, position, method, okay, cosplay generation, reference intake, ingest voice images, cosplay brief, speech to text, image embedding, brief normalization, cosplay generation, generate brief maker profile, and cosplay model, the AI 3D pipeline that produces a buildable cosplay model, render calibration, rendering cosplay. This will render or renders sharpen with you mechanic conceptually separates from generation because it's philosophical at heart. Avatar outfitting, posing, outfit, build planner, progression, project board, and then phase 3 deferred, named but not in this PRD scope, community feed and IP moderation posture, stranger onboarding flow. So at the moment, this seems reasonable enough to get started with. So I'll go ahead and say yes. Which modules do we want test coverage written for inside of our PRD? For me, I would want to have coverage for everything. So I'll say everything because I don't want to have any code that is written, especially in a greenfield type of project. Like if we can start it with all testable code, we should. So test driven development is the way to go in this particular situation. So that's the way that we're going to go. So now it's assuming that it doesn't have any further questions to ask. It should go ahead and write the PRD. And then from there, we can go ahead or come back and actually talk about what it created. Now that we have the PRD fully written, at least that's what it says, we can go ahead and explore what it has created. So the problem statement is that we have a problem that we're trying to solve for serious cosplayers, commit hundreds of hours and significant money to building canon character cosplays, Goku, Cloud, Power Rangers, Snake, etc., with no reliable way to preview the finished result on their own body before they start. Pinterest boards, fan art, reference screenshots show the character, but never on you. Never calibrated to the methods you actually use to build, foam, 3D printing, sewing, wig styling, paint, all that kind of stuff, and never in a way that grows with you as your craft improves. The result is wasted time, demoralizing mid-build pivots, and costumes that look wrong on the maker's body, and inevitably an inability to plan future cosplays with confidence before a convention. Concretely, the cosplayers faces these things, and the solution is all of this. So this does give a really detailed view in terms of what we would want to build for the AI to understand what we're trying to build, who we're trying to build it for, why we're building it, and all the things that we could possibly think of or think through for this particular build or this particular application. The one thing that I do want to push back on with the writing of the PRD is that I also want to make this a web app hostable on Vercel and or Render. The front end should be hostable on Vercel. If they're in the back end, if we need to, will be a convex backend or a render.com backend. And we need to place that inside of the PRD and the specifications as well. Okay, so now that I've made that pushback on to the PRD, it has another pushback for me saying that the convex versus render pick is intentionally left open inside the PRD. It's a decision better made at implementation time when you know whether you need GPU workers or heavy custom runtimes, lean render if I need heavy GPU, or lean render if I want heavy GPU and runtimes and all that kind of stuff, or if I want to move fast on real-time sync with minimal infra, lean convex. I also kind of think I might need to have a bridge maybe. So the convex render thing might need to be a hybrid of the two, because there are some things that will be heavier on the workload with GPUs that we will need, but I want the real-time feel and sync of convex. So if there's lightweight things that we can have inside of convex and the heavier weight things inside of render, that's the ideal situation. So you'll notice that as I'm thinking through this, even out loud in real time, there are things that I'm noticing that I may need to revisit and retool. That's completely fine. That you're going to see things, or things are going to be dawned on you as you're building or thinking through it, especially if you're talking about it, because again, you're doing this in real time. So it's a good idea to do it this way, because then you can say, oh, there's something that I missed. And we can go back and add that into the mix. And then, oh, there's something that I needed to remove. And we can do all that and remove it. And that's the iteration that you now have to spend the time. And I get it. It does take a frustrating amount of time to get started with a project like this in this manner. But once you do it and you do it the right way, it does give you a leg up going forward, so that you don't ever have to come back and revisit this stuff again. So now that we have that pushback, it has updated, or at least says that it's updated with some new things. So we'll say Convex owns the state, real-time sync, user-facing data, maker profile, product board, all that kind of stuff. So a quick aside on some things that I did slightly off camera, but just for the sake of time, I pushed this forward a little bit, specifically some of the pushbacks that I had for the AI in terms of what I thought or what I wanted to actually have inside of the project to start with. So it thought that I wanted it to not have anything with auth or CI/CD or anything like that. So I'm like, hey, we need to make a pushback here for CI/CD and using GitLab and Terraform and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, okay, cool. We'll make those changes, and here are those changes being made, both inside of the TRD and inside of the PRD as well, because there are things that we didn't talk about before inside of the PRD conversation that now have to be updated because of what I asked for. So with this all being in here, now I have Clerk accounted for, GitLab and Terraform all put inside of everything. And so I'm like, hey, okay, cool. Now we need to take all this and put it inside of a GitLab repo. I told the AI to do that for me. And to install that, you just want to go to docs.gitlab.com CLI or /CLI, and then follow the instructions here to get that installed, specifically inside of the README. So the instructions aren't, it's kind of deceiving on the page. It shows you what's happening inside of the actual nuts and bolts of the API and the CLI and all that kind of stuff. But to install it, so you go to the README, it then takes you to GitLab, and then that tells you how to install it. You will need Brew. So if you're on a Windows machine, you might want to get Windows subsystem for Linux, which is here. And if you're on a Mac, just install Brew. You should be fine. But you will need that. But once you have that installed, then you'll want to, well, then you can come back here and say, hey, GitLab, I want to install this repo and all that kind of stuff. And Claude goes ahead and does all that for you. So it comes up with the name, the description of all your commits, which I don't like writing myself ever, because I could never really really write a sensible one without making it really verbose. And I'm just like, you know what? Let AI do it. So it did everything. And then it asked me a question, and it asked like, hey, what should we call this GitLab repo, and what visibility should it have? Is it going to be private from the get-go? And yes, all my repos from the start are private, at least for now. And then it does the install. So the init, the initial init, adding all the PRDs and TRDs and stuff, git ignores and git status. And then all the good stuff is in there in terms of Git, and we can actually go to this repo and check it out. So if we go here into my cosplayer outfit repo, there it is. So we have it available. And from here, now what I did ask it, or what I did also ask for off camera, is to make a note for the future commits, because I have a Mac that I develop on as well. So it told me inside of a brief aside that because I'm on a Windows machine, even though I'm using subsystem for Linux, it does have some characters that may or may not work on Unix-based machines. I don't know why, but anyway. But because of that, I'm like, hey, because I have that situation, go ahead and make a note. And it did that for me as well, checking the repository, checking the state of the current state of the project and all that kind of stuff, making a note inside of its memory, and then making a note with the skill attached to it, and saving that memory for later. So we need to create some issues. And in order to do that, I'm going to need to create one more skill. No, I actually have the skill. I'm sorry. But it does come from Matt Polock, or Polock. I've been calling him Polock. And his GitHub, by the way, will be linked in the description, but it is right here. This is literally what I'm going to be using. So I So here's the skill that will basically take everything that we already have in terms of the technical requirements document and the product requirements document, taking all of that. And this is basically all of that said, the issue tracker, triage, label, vocabulary, and all that kind of stuff. That's going to be happening inside of setup coding shield skills, which is right over here. So all this stuff here. Again, I'll leave a link to the originator's Matt Polock GitHub repository, which has all this stuff inside of it. I just piecemealed what I needed for this project. He has a complete repository that has a whole bunch of other things. Again, it's a wonderful tool when you're trying to develop something. I'll leave it in the description, but I'm just using what I need. Everything else I'm kind of leaving there. So from here, what we need to now create is this context MD, it looks like, because we don't have that. And we also need to create this context map MD as well. And this docs, ADR, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to tell Claude to create these 3 things. And I'll say I'll just say based on the TRD and the PRD, we now need to create a context map.md and also a docs/directory. And by the way, that should be lowercase because that's what it's looking for. So I'll do that. And again, as you could expect, it does ask another question that I need to ask or answer in terms of what these terminologies and what this is supposed to mean in terms of the scope of the project and all that kind of stuff. So I need to confirm the directory name was ARD, a typo for the standard ARD architecture decision records convention, or do you mean something specific by ARD? So yes, I do mean docs, meaning that. So we want to see the ARDs for all already locked decisions. Yes, we actually do want to do that. And then that'll go off and create all of that stuff that we will need for a legit project. Again, if you were just vibe coding something for an hour or something like that, you could get something done without doing all this much planning. True. But if you want something that is actually going to become a production ready possible application, you want to do this tedious work first. And this is the stuff that a senior engineer would actually have you doing or would be doing themselves, you as the senior engineer specifically. But us as engineers and entrepreneurs, we have to do both of those things and wear both of those hats. So taking the time before you actually do any type of real coding to do the planning work first is going to save you a lot of headache 10 years down the road if you decide to keep going with this application that long. But your future self is what I'm saying is going to thank you immensely. I'm saying all this while this is I'm stalling. While this is figuring out and doing all this stuff and answering what I told it to answer and write the code for me because I don't want to write these documents myself. Anyway, specifically, we're not going to write any code. But if you're not writing code, specifically, this is the reason why you want to have all this type of planning and to speak the same language with your AI before you actually start writing anything. Because once you do, that's when you have to commit. All right, finally, now we actually have all of the 8 ADR documents created, 1 through 10. The first 10 are available. We are using the web for the platform because, again, it's easier to showcase that inside of a video. And then hybrid context and render because, again, we need both of those things for convex in terms of reactive and reactivity and making the application feel really real time. And then also render because we need a backend that can handle the pressure of building a 3D anything. So that's going to obviously need a GPU. And then the async, Next.js, Clerk, all that kind of stuff. Commercial 3D generation API. We're going to use Meshy to help do some of that work. For the cosplay generation in V1, we are also going to self-host Econ on Render GPU for body scan. Again, that's the more convenient way. We could also push back there and possibly find a cloud version, but that might be way more expensive too. So there's trade-offs there. That might be something that I might think about later on if I do decide to actually make this a thing. GitHub or GitLab, I'm sorry, for source control, Terraform for CI/CD, all that kind of stuff. And from here, we should be able to now tell Claude to create the issues that are inside of this project, at least the initial ones. Well, let's see. What else do we need to do here? Let's see. We got that. We need to run this to-issue skill next. So we've created the setup coding shield, or at least I created it just now. And then that then needed a few things, specifically the context map, context, and the ADR stuff over here. So we should be able to say, go ahead and create the issues. Now that we have the ADRs and the context maps and the context.md, let's go ahead and create all the issues for this project and attach it to the GitLab repository that we have for this project. And yes, it is again, and because we know that that's actually working, because it did ask me to get the 2 issues. So that's what we want to do. From here, it should now go ahead and create issues specifically for the entire project, start to finish. Yes, again, I could just go ahead and start the Next.js and all that kind of stuff. But again, I want to show that it's better to start with a slow on-ramp so that you can see the decisions that you're making, see the decisions that the AI is making sure that you align with those decisions. If you're going to be the person that's going to support it, you're responsible for the code that the AI writes, regardless of the fact that the AI is writing the code. Yes, that's true, but you also have to be the person that looks at the code if it's going to be something that goes into production for users. So doing this slowly is a good idea. All right, so it has now finished, or at least a proposed slice breakdown for each of the portions of the app to get started. So we have off scaffolding. So yes, we do want to make sure we have all that made available. Terraform, envelope, get attributes, all that kind of stuff. Convex and render workers, making round trip callbacks, making sure that they can communicate together. That is something that we want to make sure that we have intact, but we want to do that only if this has done its job first. So this is now blocked by this guy over here. So the same thing goes for here, maker, profile MVP, schema, methodologies, and all that kind of stuff. Again, blocked by number 1. If that's not done, then we can't move forward. And no. I'm not going to bore you with the rest of that, but that is basically what we're trying to do here. If I were like literally, you would want to read through each of these and make sure they actually make sense for your project, for what you think the project should do. Now, to be fair, you may or may not know exactly what it should look like overall in terms of some of the decisions that you want to make long term. Those might happen in the heat of battle, like when you're actually putting this into production or something like that, and something breaks. When it does, and you know it will, that's when you have to make split-second decisions on what that needs to be, or what the fix needs to look like. But that's the fun part, at least to me. If you're putting stuff into production that you've carefully crafted with AI, and you've done the actual homework and the guts inside of the app to do what it needs to do and actually have the things that it needs to have, and you put the guardrails up for the harness and all that kind of stuff, when something breaks, and you're looking at logs and all that kind of, and you're looking at logs and you're researching, figuring all this out with the AI, to me, that feels kind of Tony Starkish. So that's why I think it's fun. But so far, this kind of looks okay. I'm not closely looking at this because of the time of the video, because this is already a very long video. But this looks okay. Convention deadlines, calendar seed. Okay, that could work. Build completion. Okay, stories 5, 8, 9, and 30. Past build, portfolio uploads, During onboarding, preview, render, during onboarding, voice description, home screen evaluation are folded into the relevant slices above for 4.8, the post-launch home screen iteration of 15 plus. What is 15 plus? Oh, no, 15 plus 18. Okay. Stories 42 and 47, which are inside of the PRD over here. So that's this guy. Where are you? 42, and 47 right here. So 42 and user story 47 here. Those, oh, just kind of bonkered it a little bit. Those are phased into 2 and 3. So this convex and the maker profile MVP. So this looks right. Most GitLab projects use labels for triage. The 2 PRD, 2 TRD skills mentioned ready for agent as the default. What labels should I apply to these issues when creating them? Ready for agent is good. Let's see, 2 labels, ready for agent for triage state, tracer bullet to mark these as vertical slice issues, distinct from later bug fix feature issues. Even though that's recommended, I like this one. So I'm gonna go with that. Now, why would I go with the non-recommended version of the answers that they gave me? Well, because I'm the engineer. I've done this. I know that I want to keep things separate as much as I possibly can when it comes to looking at things that come from my app that need to be triaged and figured out. What do I need to like work on today, right now, in this moment? So that's why I'm saying, nah, I'll take both of those labels. Thank you very much. So we'll go ahead and let that do labeling and it should get to work. So now, again, finally, GitLab or Claude has finished creating all of the GitLab issues, I should say, which will be right here. So these guys right here. So 1 to 20, all attached to Cosplay Outfitter, which also now has its ready for agent tag and tracer bullet tags. And if I wanted to add any other tags to that, I could, but this is now available, ready to go in terms of picking these particular slices and issues, pulling them inside of Claude, having Claude work on this, and then say return back what you have. Once you've verified the working app, move on to the next issue and all that kind of stuff. Now, the other thing that I should also add to this is the tests. I don't know if we talked about that with the AI yet, so let's talk about that now. I don't know if we talked about this yet, but now that we have our issues and we have the 3 human in the loops and all of those types of things, we also now need to figure out what types of tests we're going to need to create, or do we need to hold off on that until we actually write some code? Now, I believe, this is my intuition coming in here, that you should write your tests first. So I'm testing the AI a little bit to see what it comes up with, to see like, hey, do you suggest writing tests first, or do you suggest writing code first? And I would say, and if it does say write code first, I'm going to push back and say, hey, no, let's write tests first. Before we do that, do a red-green refactor. And then once we have that ready to go, then we know that the actual app is working the way that it's supposed to. Okay. So it says mostly yes, hold off on writing specific tests until you have code, but there's a small amount of testing strategy scaffolding worth doing now that the PRD and TRD don't fully cover. Good catch. What's already locked in, don't redo. We want to test the PRD testing decisions, the testing stack, or all that kind of, we don't necessarily need to visit the testing stack. We know we're going to use vtest to do this, and what each module's test should look like. Every relevant issue already has the invariant tests in the acceptance criteria. So issues 14, for example, foam only build plan tests or the append only progression tests, those are already baked in. So what's not yet captured by the PRD and TRD just yet. So we do need to look at visual regression testing for 3D, performance budgets. So for what do we want the worker latency budget to actually be? how fast do we need that to be? What sub latency do we need to stay under? Again, this is just for me right now, so I'm going to play with that. But a mock worker pattern for which we don't already have. We need a test pyramid shape as well. And then also a test environment story. So per deploy. So I'm going to tell Claude to do exactly those few things. It's saying that, let's see, we need to write a testing.md at the repo root that captures the cross-cutting strategy in 5 bullets above. It's an artifact that we need inside of our context window or inside of our context for the project. It grows with the project and is where contributions will look first when adding tests. So we don't need to make an ADR for this because this is a convention strategies type of situation. Would take 15 to 20 minutes to draft. Do you want me to write it? Of course I do. So let's do that. Go ahead and write that. And anything that needs to be added, go ahead and add it. So now that we've told it that we need the testing plan, it is now going ahead and created that testing plan here. The testing MD sits here. We need to test is now properly laid out. Sources of truth, where to find all that kind of stuff is now properly laid out, and how to write the test, or telling the AI how to write the test specifically from start to finish here. Exactly what we want. On merge requests, fast deterministic. Deterministic is the key word here. We want every single one of our commits or merge requests to be deterministic. We want to know exactly what the code is supposed to do from start to finish. So every merge is deterministic, which is yes, that's what we want. This nightly thing, this is basically if I were going to, again, put this into a hard production environment and actually get users for this, maybe I would probably do something like this. So the nightly build pipeline stuff, if we need to do end-to-end playwright runs for a staging environment, if we're actually like writing or testing it end-to-end inside of the actual browser, we can do that, but do that nightly though, so we're not interrupting anything in terms of real users. All that stuff is inside of testing. Again, this is, it's going to be inside of a private repo. If you want to get access to that private repo, hit the link down in the description, because I'm a little sensitive because I have had some things happen to my repos in the past on who gets access to repos that I have. So if you want access to it, if you want to see how I'm building all this stuff and the prompts that I'm using, hit the link down in the description, and also hit the subscribe button if I haven't already said that. I don't think I said that in this video yet. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you like content like this and all types of builds and stuff like that, because we are building a community of entrepreneurs around here that will build and use automation, AI development, and all that kind of stuff, use their superpowers with development to build a life that will buy back time inside their lives so they can spend it with the people and and do the things that they love. So me personally, I'm going to be spending it with my family cosplaying. So this is what I'm trying to figure out now here. So where did I leave off? Okay, here we are. Okay, so we have everything. I think we have everything ready to go. Nothing committed yet. Testing MD joins context MD context map and the ADR directory in the working tree. Want me to bundle all of these into one commit, or do you want me to commit them in separate logical chunks? Actually, yes. Separate logical chunks makes more sense. So go ahead and bundle these, or separate these, into logical chunks and then commit them that way. By the way, Whisperflow, good on you in terms of the I definitely flubbed on what I was saying. You didn't put that inside of the text. That's nice to see. It's actually really okay. So that CRLF thing came up again. So I'm going to tell it, fix it now. All right. So we are officially ready for the first entry point for building the application. This has taken a long time to get here, but now we have we've earned the right to actually write our first lines of code, which now that we actually have, there's still some pre-flight things that we need to do so that the application runs the way that it's supposed to. Specifically, we will need some things from Convex in terms of API keys and publishable keys, all that kind of stuff. Clerk, same thing. GitLab CI, same thing. And then also Terraform envelope, same thing. So to communicate with all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those services, we need to connect them all with our envs or with the keys and stuff like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and let's start coding. Let's hit the pre-flight starting point for the application, getting Vercel, Convex, Clerk, GitLab CLI or GitLab CI and Terraform setup. We've come to the point where it's now asking which accounts do I already have. So I do have a Vercel account, a Convex account, and a Clerk account as well. Why is it not letting me do anything else? That's all I need. What is going on? Okay, node pin. Okay. Your local node is 25.9 bleeding edge. Vercel's build runners cap at 22, which is the longest or the LTS version through mid 2026. And the TRD pinned 20 LTS as the floor. Okay. So to keep dev and prod matched, what should we pin? Let's pin to 20 if 22 is LTS now. So let's do that. At least we don't have to worry about anything breaking in production. So that's, again, the reason why we're doing all this, because I didn't know that Vercel wasn't on the bleeding edge. I should have guessed that they weren't, but I didn't know that they weren't on at least maybe 24. Well, honestly, no, I didn't. I also didn't know that 22 was the LTS for Node because I just didn't look. Now that I did all of this work and it did ask me these questions, doing all this now is like, oh yeah, hey, wait, before we actually write this stuff, do we need to make this adjustment first? And yes, we actually do need to make that adjustment. So now that we have made that adjustment, I don't need to worry about whether or not my application is going to break when I send it out into Vercel for the very first time. I can be pretty confident that now that I've done this work, it's going to actually be 90% ready to go. There may be some things that may break along the way when you first try to deploy it for the first time, but for the most part, it should be okay. Now, in the midst of it building everything, it did do something that I'm going to, and when I can, push back on later on. Now, it made a decision to go ahead and release the 22 cap in terms of the Node version, and I don't want to do that long term, but I see why it did it, and for the short term, I'm going to let it happen. It did, because I have 25 installed, it did go ahead and say, hey, just go ahead and install to get the scaffolding working because it was airing out. But I am going to say once I do install, because I don't have Node 22 installed on my machine at all anyway. So once I install it, I'm going to say, hey, roll that back because I want this to be on 22. So when we go back to when we're actually developing, I'm going to need you to be on 22. So we're on the same page with Vercel because that's the platform that we're working with. And that's the version that we have from them. So yeah, again, you can see that everything is getting warned because of the current version that I have installed, which right now is not there. So once I have it installed, I am going to roll that back, but I don't have it right now. So let's see what we have. This git add npm-rc, all these. Do I want to? Yes, I guess we could. We test no pin as the local foundation. Yes. Okay, cool. Let's go. Now that I'm going through all this, I'm realizing that there are some things that I don't want to continue to keep going on with. So one of the things is the restriction thing here, basically not having any sign-up modes, just having me as the only and sole user, the first and sole user, basically. I want to make 1 or 2 pushbacks on the clerk setup. I do want to have Google Social available from day one, and I also want to make the just one user not a thing. I want the application to be able to actually sign up a real user, not having to sign up through the dashboard. All right, so it did make that adjustment. So I don't need that anymore. We will need to connect Convex and Clerk with a secret key and all that kind of stuff. But it has continued its work, or is continuing its work, in creating or scaffolding the application for me. While it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and grab the other stuff that it will need. So I'm going to need to grab this guy and this guy. Again, some of these things I've already done off camera because of time and just security stuff. But I have created a cosplay outfitter Convex, okay, say that 10 times fast, deployment project. So we can actually get started with that. So those credentials are going to get placed off screen again for time and security purposes. Then I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so now that I have done all of the grunt work in terms of setting all the accounts up, go ahead and write the rest of the scaffolding that we need for the project for Clerk middleware, sign in, sign up, all that kind of stuff for Clerk and Convex to talk to each other so that we can connect our first user. Now, while that's working in the background, I'm going to show you what I did basically. So I did create a new Convex project, and I also created a new Clerk project as well. You might be wondering, why go with Clerk when you could do with Better Auth or anything like that? The reason is I just don't want to deal with the headache of managing everything. Yes, you do necessarily have the lock-in, the vendor lock-in, all that kind of stuff. But if I'm trying to build something and get it out the door, I'd rather just get it up and running, have it managed, and then if I need to migrate my users, then I can. Will it be a fight? Maybe. But I'll worry about that once I have actual users. So not just a different thought process of like getting something, yes, because we can build it as a developer. Should we build it? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. Do you want the headache? That's the main thing. So I created that. Clerk or Claude is still doing what it's doing. So I'm going to let that ride out, and then I'll be right on back. All right, so it has created at least the bare bones of the project. So that is right over here, it looks like. So it has middleware, has the app, sign in, sign up, global CS, layout, provider. The only thing I don't know if we talked about, if we wanted to have, did we talk about Tailwind and Shad CI or Shad seeing in this? I don't know if I did or not. Dev dependencies. No, it looks like we didn't. So, unless that is going to be, is that going to be for a later? Let me see. Let's see. Is it in here? Tailwind CSS. Nope, we didn't talk about it. Okay. So we do need to add Tailwind CSS into the project. I'm glad I thought about that beforehand, because that would have been really hard. Well, not really hard, but really annoying to add in later on. So I'm going to add in this now. And let me say, I forgot to add that we are going to be using ShadCN and all of the different variants that can be added to a project from that ecosystem using ShadCN, that complete ecosystem, and also obviously Tailwind CSS. So we need to add that into the project as well. Okay, so let's see. It's good call adding ShadCN UI Tailwind is a real architectural choice. This should be captured properly. Let me sequence this. So run npm to install it, add button, convert the existing pages to Tailwind classes, write ADR 12, update TRD, and update context MD, and then commit. Okay, so we want that to happen. All right, so a little bit further along down the road, we now have things scaffolded in terms of Tailwind inside of the project. We can also, well, almost run it, not just yet, but we should be able to in just a second. So if it's telling us we want to add more, here's the way to do that. But everything should be so far living inside of source, app, or components, at least right now, and then button, which is the only one that we have installed at the moment. I know that you can install with this guy. So PNDLX chassis and latest add, I think it's just add will get you everything. By the way, I also did take care of the install for Node 22 because we are going to need that. So I might as well go ahead and do it. And then we'll just go ahead and say pnpm add. Whoop. I guess we can't do that. So I think it's npn or npx shad cn at latest add, maybe. Is that what it is? Yes. And it should give me all of the components that are available for shad if it is going to work. There we go. So this gives me everything. I'm just going to say all and install because I don't know what I'm going to need and I'd rather just get it all done. Something went wrong. Please check the error below for more details of the problem command. You can also try a previous version to see if that works. Okay, that's interesting. So let's see. This is when context 7 would actually be a very good idea to have already, but I don't have it, so I'm just going to look at what are we looking for in PNP what? PNPM component install. Okay, so that should be what I should be able to use, which is what I'm using, and then to do that. Well, what gives there? Can you not do all of them at the same time with this command? That's news to me. Guess not. Okay, or PM. Oh, that's why. I don't have PNPM installed on this machine. I thought I did. Interesting. Well, let's fix that. Or no. I mean, I might as well let's see if Claude will fix it for me. I forgot again, like I said, I switched from 25 to 22. So PNPM is installed globally, but only for the version that you're working with currently. So I need to reinstall it and then come back. And now we're doing that again. So oops, I didn't want to do that. Here. And here we go. Installing the dependency. Okay, so we've gotten to a good start, a good place where we now have the opportunity to open the application and then log in, and you can see that I did log myself in, but I did hit an error. So there's something that I need to fix that I need to take back to Claude or look at the code and figure out what did I miss. Probably I forgot to add or I put in the wrong place a key or something like that, but that should be a pretty easy fix based on what I have so far, what I know about convex and clerk and all that kind of stuff. But this video has become very, very long when I didn't really intend it to. So this is now going to be a series. I'm going to continue building out this project over a series of videos, but I wanted to show you that we do have a starting point, a good starting point that we're going to build on for the upcoming videos so that we can see how a full project would be created from start to finish. So you've seen in this video, come up with the packaging, the issues, break everything down from the top level all the way down to the most granular level, and then make changes as we go. So if you want to stick around and see more of that content and see the full build, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you are a aspiring or seasoned entrepreneur and you want to take your time back into your life using development, AI, automation, and all that kind of stuff, again, hit that subscribe button. This is the community for you. We are building all that kind of stuff around here on how to buy time back inside of our lives. So until next time, until next video, y'all be smooth, blurt out.